This week on the Sports Initiative podcast, I sit down with youth phase coach at Crystal Palace, Josh Bednash. He discusses his performance analysis work that he promotes on social media, the process he goes through in order to complete this work and how it benefits the players he works with, and how the London cage culture has helped Crystal Palace produce players that are very strong in 1v1s. I hope you enjoy. So Josh, first of all, appreciate you jumping on. Did you have a nice break over the festive periods and kind of relax from what's been a crazy 2020?
Yeah, hi Michael. Thanks for having me on. Firstly, really appreciate the invite. Like we spoke about just briefly off camera, it was nice just to kind of recharge the batteries and recuperate and watch tons of football over the Christmas period. But yeah, although we're living in difficult times, it's very nice to relax and recharge, like yourself, I imagine.
Yeah, 100%. Got tested positive for COVID, so I've been isolating. So this is my last day, which hasn't been ideal, but apart from that, we're all good. So I came across your work kind of on social media, and the thing that struck out to me mainly was kind of the analysis side that you're doing, which has been really good. So do you want to talk through kind of what your roles are at the moment, what jobs you're doing, and I guess what led you down the route of analysing kind of as in depth as you are?
Yeah, so my job, I work at Crystal Palace with the under-15s. I'm the assistant coach there to Mark Newson, who's the lead coach and head of phase. I've worked with the 14s prior to that. I'm working with the 15s now, and I also work full time in a school as a PE teacher. So doing both at the minute. In terms of the analysis work, it's more just a pastime, I think. When I'm not on the grass or not planning sessions or analysing sessions, I like to, as I'm sure all coaches do, watch football and clip things out that I think are relevant to maybe things you've spoken about with the players in the week, or maybe our topic that week, or that session. In terms of what I've done of analysis work prior, currently I'm just trying to, as we're all watching tons of football right now and sitting on our phones quite a lot, just trying to find something interesting in a game, clip it out, post it on Twitter, and see kind of what people think about it and get some conversation going. Perhaps can share it amongst the coaches and get some conversation going there, and maybe even share it with the players, which is always a benefit. Prior to, well, not prior, but alongside coaching, I was doing some analysis work for Spielwagen. I'm not sure if I've said it correctly right, but it's a German tactics blog with some really great writers on there who welcomed me on, and I did a few pieces for them. The last thing I did, I think, was about a year or so ago. But yeah, it's really great doing some work for them, and that's more of an in-depth, maybe match analysis or player analysis or whatever it might be, team analysis. I was doing a few match analyses, so watching a game, finding a few themes. How one team's played, maybe how both teams played, maybe how one team's countered another way a team's playing, and then clipping out a few sections, and then you create sort of what they call graphs on like a tactics board online, and then post that up on the website with different dynamics and what's going on the pitch. So that was always a good opportunity to do some analysis and do some watching games in a bit more detail, and just spending time, pausing, rewinding, and clipping things out. And yeah, to be honest with you, I enjoy doing it. I like doing it. I like looking at the little details tactically, technically, and trying to learn as much as I can. Really, we all haven't got the answers, and definitely, I'm a long way from that. So it's good just to try and learn and get some opinions and bounce off people like yourself, and try and improve yourself and the players you work with, really.
I think we'll come back to the players you work with, because I think it'd be interesting to hear kind of what you guys do at Palace, because obviously you've been very, very successful in terms of getting players through the ranks. And I know, seeing online, you've mentioned a little bit about moves that you do that you can see from Eze and stuff at the top end, even though he didn't come through your academy. You can see similarities there. On the analysis stuff, obviously we spoke before, and you mentioned you're an Arsenal fan, which wasn't too pleased about being a Spurs fan. But one of the things that is particularly kind of stood out to me was the work you've done around kind of assessing, I guess, Arteta's reign to a certain degree. And you mentioned before about the style and structure he's trying to play and difficulties he's having. Do you want to talk through kind of what you've seen, I guess, as a fan, but then also on an analytical level as well?
Yeah, I mean, again, I have to caveat all of this with I could be completely wrong. I could be totally wrong. There could be instructions from the players or from the coach or from the coaching team which have completely eluded me, as we all are when we're just analysing. But looking at how Arsenal are playing at the moment, I think it's fascinating in terms of the contradiction of how Man City play and the comparisons between how Man City play. Having worked under Guardiola, Arteta, you'd assume, me as much as anyone else, is trying to go down more of a positional play model, in the sense of, as I'm sure most of your listeners are aware, but having certain players in certain areas of the pitch based on where the ball is, based on where the opposition is, and maximising the spaces in between the opposition lines. And as Guardiola said in an interview the other day, attacking and running just at the right time after, I think he said 1 billion passes, I think is exaggerating, but after 1 billion passes, when do you then penetrate? There's tons of things in there that you need to be able to have in order for that to work, namely the timing of your movement, body shapes receiving between the lines, technique to be able to pass in between the lines, the tactical understanding to be able to move into different spaces based on where the ball is. But there's also so much there psychologically in terms of having the confidence, the bravery, the understanding, the patience to be able to do that. I think looking at, again, this is based on an assumption that Arteta is trying to follow a positional model, which he did under Guardiola. And now with Juan Malila working under Guardiola, who was his mentor many years ago, there's a lineage there of coaches who are working on that model. And it seems as if the Arsenal players at the minute are just really struggling to execute what they are potentially being asked to do. There could be loads of factors to do with that. I'd imagine it's probably really, really difficult to come into a club and completely alter the culture and the change of playing style in a year. And as you've seen with Southampton and even Guardiola's first season and loads of different examples, that takes a long time to be able to implement that. I think there's a few things when you look at it and you think he's asking the players to do X, Y, Z, but it's not perhaps clicking correctly at the moment. So one example would be at Man City and at Bayern Munich, having a fullback coming inside, which I'm sure, again, a lot of your listeners are aware of. Philip Lahm playing inside. When does he play inside? When does he move inside? When does he move outside? Is it just to progress the ball? Is it to stop the other team counter-attacking? I think you see Arsenal doing that. So you see Bellerin going inside last night, or maybe Maitland-Niles go inside at times, and Saka and Saka going wide from inside right position. But you look at it and you think the body shape in this position, or their timing of when they've gone in there, or their distance from the ball, or their angle from the ball is not quite right in that second. You need it to be right in order to progress the ball forward, and then they have to go backwards or sideways and then end up kicking it long. So it's just those little tiny details which I'd imagine they're really trying to focus and hone in on. You watch right now and you think it's not quite there, but again, this is just a bystander's perspective, and I can imagine the job must be incredibly difficult to do so. But I think it's interesting how he's going to follow this positional game and make a team that plays as fluently as Guardiola's team or other positional teams play. Is he going to use these players? Is he going to wait and try and give them more opportunities to practice this game? Is he going to buy new players? How's it going to work? But I think it's an exciting time. I think it's an interesting time. So yeah, I think in terms of the little details you're speaking about on Twitter, I just think it's fascinating how the wrong body shape at the wrong second, or the wrong positioning in between the lines at the wrong second, can destroy a whole move from progressing. I think that's one of the fantastic things about Phil Foden against Arsenal the other week. His ability to stand in between the lines at just the right time when the ball is free to be able to pass to him, and in the right body shape, and scanning numerous times before getting the ball, allows them to turn, and then you can be you've got so many options from there once you're turning in between the lines. But yeah, I think it's very interesting. Again, must be a very, very difficult job, and one I can only look at in admiration for attempting. But yeah.
One thing you mentioned online and you discussed was kind of the role of El Neni recently, who's kind of playing that traditional four, if you like, and probably the Fernandinho is kind of better known in these parts in terms of getting on the ball. And one of the things you're talking about, kind of when you're progressing the ball, was his body shape in order to receive, which was quite square on with Leno at the time. Do you just want to talk through some of the things you saw regarding kind of his body shape and why that then proved to be difficult when he was looking to progress, or why it was hard for Arsenal to move the ball forward and allowed kind of a good press into deeper areas?
Well, I think there was 2 or 3 different situations that were common. I think the first situation that's common would be you building up, we can call it build up phase 1, when you're starting from a goal kick or a dead ball, or the ball goes back to the goalkeeper. Once the pass went to the centre back, so the right back or the right centre back or the left centre back, the timing then at which the holding midfielder theoretically needs to move either deeper than the player who's pressing the ball. Imagine you've now got a player pressing down the line of the ball, or at an angle to curve their run and force the play somewhere. This player now can't see you because you're behind them, but they can block you with what some people call their cover shadow. So like the space behind them, which blocks you getting the ball. So the most important thing, what we say to our players, is see the ball. So if you can't see the ball, if you can see the player in front of you's back, then you can't get the ball. So we say, see the ball, move into a position where you can see the ball just as they look up. So that you basically have 2 options. You either move to the right or to the left. If the player's pressing down the ball, say the left centre back has the ball, getting pressed by maybe a 9 or a right winger, you then have to move to the left or to the right. El Neni, it seemed in a lot of the clips, was jogging at the same speed and at the same position as the player pressing, so it was down his back. So when the left centre back looks up in that split second, they can't see you, and therefore they have to either go to another option or kick it long, and then you lose control of possession. So I think that'd be one picture, and that'd be one situation where we'd say you either have to stop here and move to the left, or you've got to speed up your movement and move to the right. You've got to run at a different pace and a different speed and different angle to the player in front of you, or you can't receive the ball. Ideally, you want to receive the ball on your back foot to go forward if you've got time and space. You've got space to go into. So whichever of those two options allow you to do that, that's probably the better option. I think the other picture would be when the ball was central with Leno and El Neni is going straight down the line of the ball. And in fact, someone responded to me on Twitter, made a good point, which was there's a few clips where Arsenal have ended up scoring from where it's gone into that central player. They've been facing the goalkeeper and then bounced it out to the centre back, inviting pressure from behind, bounced it out to the centre back and then progressed from there. Which, like I said, that caveat at the beginning when I was talking, I could be completely wrong. This could be completely what they want to do. They could be being asked to do this. And that was a great point someone made to me. What I responded as was, that's a really good thing to do. I think if you time your movement to invite the pressure from behind you, so as the ball comes to you, the player from behind you is pressing at the same time because your timing of run is so then you can bounce it out to the centre back, and now the player who's on your back has theoretically been eliminated if you pass past them. What was happening in the clips was his timing was too early, so he was running towards Leno. The player behind him was still 10 meters from pressing him, in which case he probably would have been able to turn there and then move forward rather than having to be so square on and then not have an option to do that. So in terms of, I think actually, like we said earlier, whether it's probably better to use these bits and these clips to help your own players and help players that you know who you give an instruction to, because you can say, this is happening here. This is what I think you could do in this situation. What do you think you could do in this situation? Blah, blah, blah. But it's maybe more difficult to go, this is what's happening here and this is what he should have done. Because like I said, I don't know what he's been told to do. He could have been told something completely different. He could have been told to move there and not get the ball. This is a decoy. We don't know. But so therefore maybe it's better to analyze a team in light of the message you want to give to your own players, or or even to advise your own learning, but understand there are so many grey areas with it. Those are probably the two main pictures. I think the third picture will probably be when the ball would be in the fullback area. What is El Neni or the holding player doing there in order to allow the player to come back into the middle and go out the other side? Are they deep enough from the ball to receive one pass on their back foot and go forward? A player who's brilliant at that is Yuri Tielemans, who's fantastic at doing that. And I've seen a few clips circulate recently, and he's excellent at that tiny split-second movement just to backpedal or sidestep 2-3 yards deeper than the ball to be able to go back foot and then forward again. Changes so much. If you don't do that in that second, then your team are going to have to either maybe kick it long, which you might want to do, but if your team now is interested in keeping the ball and having control over possession, that's probably not something you do want to do.
I think that's an interesting
yeah.
one, because I think I've seen some of the clips you're on about, and I also watched the game. So a lot of them come from the Tottenham game. Obviously Tottenham in a low block as they are at the moment, like it or loathe it. He plays a lateral pass kind of out to the fullback, which then makes his centre midfielder drop in to screen the front players or the half space. And then literally as soon as he plays that lateral on, he knows that, I think it was Sissoko at the time, going to drop. Then he drops, and all of a sudden he's gone from being pressured to having a 7-yard gap, which then allows him to receive and go forward again. And I thought it's a great illustration of you talk with players about movement after you've played. Doesn't have to be a 10, 20-yard sprint. Sometimes it can just be an intelligent pass wide and then a 3 or 4 yard back pedal, or standing still or moving away from play, and all of a sudden you've created a massive bit of space for yourself to then be able to get on the ball and then play again.
Yeah, definitely. I think something we are told as youngsters, and we hear often as young players, I think, would be pass and move or pass and follow. But I think as I've definitely been around coaches in the academy level, and have made me think of it in a different light, which is, if you pass and move, you might be passing and moving and actually closing down your angle or closing down your teammate's angle. So I think some of the coaches I've been speaking to at Palace and also, I mean, some things I've been reading online would kind of go along a different route, which rather than pass and move, play and stay might be a better way of speaking about it. In certain phases, of course, you don't want to stay the whole time, and you're never going to be able to threaten with runs in behind. But like in the phase you're speaking about there, building up, if you play and then stay in the angle you are, but move subtly side to side and try and receive on a different foot or go in a different angle, you're going to invite pressure, and you're going to invite pressure from a different player, and then you can find the gap. If you pass and then move elsewhere, not only are you then going to be in a different position to receive the ball in, but you might be inviting their players into a crowded area and not be able to break through with a good body shape. I think a lot of rondo drills, so just a standard rondo, but loads of variations to it. Obviously, you've got maybe 4 players on the outside, maybe more, maybe 2 in the middle, maybe 1 joker or attacking player, or 10, or whatever you want to call it, in the middle. And those games are all based around playing and moving 2 yards one side, 2 yards the other side, to create a better supporting angle, to either bounce in a few times, then break a line, or open up and receive and play the other side. And so much of those little rondo games, you can get out so many outcomes that you then use in a 11v11. But that might be quite a good way of speaking about it. And then obviously when you get into maybe finishing phase, you're then making more runs in behind, and you're threatening in behind a bit more.
So do you like to kind of watch Arsenal because it's a happy thingy, you support them and then you can analyse them as you go along, or are there particular teams you like to analyse and watch?
Yeah, to be honest with you, I probably went through quite a big as you know, working in football, you don't support a team as you support a team when you're at school. It's just not possible, because if you've got a game that clashes with the game of your team, you're not going to go, oh, sorry, sorry to your boss, I can't come to work today because Arsenal playing Burnley at 3 o'clock. You can't really do that. And therefore, I think you lose your affinity somewhat with the team you're supporting, and you watch football in a more analytical way. So there was a long period of time where a lot of Arsenal games I wouldn't watch because maybe playing fantastic stuff or having had really great players, but just in my opinion, I felt that I wasn't necessarily seeing many consistent themes that you can kind of draw from regularly, and you can go, okay, they're doing this and they've done this again, and then maybe there may be what you call a structured team, and therefore I can see patterns emerging.
Have you got examples of that?
Of teams that don't do that?
Of a situation where you saw where it was clear that, you know, they could have done the same pattern or they could have pressed in the same way, but it was clear whilst you're watching it that wasn't the case, and it was kind of freelancing to a degree.
Well, I think, again, I don't want to turn this into an Arsenal podcast for your listeners who hate Arsenal, but I think that a lot of the times in which Arsenal would really do well against teams at home, your so-called teams that weren't perhaps in the top 6 at home, and win comfortably 4-5-0, and then when they played against Chelsea under Mourinho, or teams that were slightly more, you know, we're going to defend in X way, maybe like you said, in a deep block, can you beat us? Which takes probably a bit more of an approach of, these are going to be the spaces at these exact moments, and this is what we need to capitalize on. They struggled a bit more. I think now, although Arsenal are doing a lot worse in the league, I think it's interesting to see how everything fits together and starting to fit together. To answer your earlier question, yeah, I do. Again, I don't think that playing a certain way is necessarily better than playing another way, but just in terms of can you, especially when I was doing a bit of work for a bit of tactics writing, and you want to maybe look at a team that, okay, can I write something about this team? Are there themes emerging here that I can analyze on a regular basis? I think that is interesting. There was teams. There's been teams that are able to analyze it a bit better. Leeds under Bielsa when they're in the Championship, obviously. I think Napoli under Sarri a few years ago were really interesting to watch. Even I think Barcelona under Quique Setien were really, didn't do very well, but were interesting to watch. How, because he's quite a positional play coach, and how his methods, how they didn't work, which I think is also fascinating, and what the players weren't able to do, perhaps due to the way they've been asked to play, is interesting. Yeah, I think, like I said, when there's a theme and you can see a clear style of play, I think it maybe, for me anyway, it tends to be slightly more captivating to watch regularly, because you can kind of make connections week to week.
What are your thoughts on Bielsa? Because I've tried to, I've made a conscious effort to watch pretty much all of their games this year. One, because you hear the style of football they play, and every game that I've watched has been exciting, so it makes me want to come back for more. But the other is because everyone attributes, a lot of the top managers attribute their work to him and what they learned from him. And obviously, yeah, I've been quite impressed by it. So when you've analysed, you've looked at them, is there any particular themes beyond them just running at crazy distances that has really stood out to you?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's loads. I think the running is obviously is an important thing. I think we need to be a bit careful with how we look at running, because I think running 15 kilometers in the game doesn't necessarily mean it's useful running. I think as players, I mean, you could, if you tally up distance covered and maybe some more qualitative and quantitative measures that you can measure how a player's done, I think it can be very useful addition. But I don't think necessarily just running a lot is a marker of why a team are doing well. Again, I've looked at some that of the way, like there's a really good book by Jed Davis I don't know if you follow him on Twitter, who wrote a book about Bielsa. I think it was about 5 years ago. And it's a really interesting book, and it speaks about kind of his own coaching journey and how he's been kind of obsessed with Bielsa for years and looked at Bielsa's methods and tried to weave them into his own coaching journey, coaching a few teams and a university in England, and I think he worked out in Canada. And it's a really interesting book. And so I read that about 5 years ago, 4 or 5 years ago. And I think at that time he was working for Marseille. I might be wrong on that. Happy to be corrected on that, but I think he was working for Marseille at the time. And it was just fascinating in terms of the different structures he uses in possession, out of possession, the detail at which he looks at technique. So I think, again, I could be wrong on this, but I think Bielsa says there are 28 ways of passing a ball, something along those lines. And then he also speaks about there's an X number of ways you can run in behind, there's X number of ways you can receive. I think a lot of the work I've seen from little clips of Twitter, again, it's probably less than 1% of what he actually does, but a lot of the little clips I've seen have been of really detailed kind of just technical movement patterns or hammering in the same slight movement to maybe move one way, then move the other to receive at the exact right timing. So I think when you watch Bielsa team, the reason it looks so in sync and when they are playing well, it's like it's one organism, one machine all working together. I think seems to be because a lot of the work they do a lot of technical work, and I've seen a lot of clips of timing of movements or receiving patterns or really specific detail broken down and repeated loads of times. And then also you've got the intensity there. You've obviously got the incredible analytical level where they're watching hundreds of games a season. You've got the tactical detail. So a lot of people tweeting the other day about playing the game the other day. I forget it was the game before the West Brom game. Played 3-3-1-3, which is obviously a variety of different formations. But I think he's played that before Marseille and Bilbao. So there's loads and loads there. And yeah, I think you've also got his intensity and his mannerisms, which are really interesting. So it's a fascinating concoction. I really do hope they do well. And the way he's improved certain players is just remarkable. Like Luke Ayling, he's turned into a fantastic fullback, really good player, which is obviously fascinating to watch.
Yeah, I mean, I've seen little bits again on social media, also on YouTube, where I've kind of gone searching for stuff. And I agree with you. From what I've seen, and again, I'd be happy to be corrected from this, it seems like he does a lot of kind of functional 2s and 3s practices where they're really honing in those skills. So that the players have an opportunity to practice the things they're going to be doing in a game. So it's not kind of generic, do a rondo, do attack versus defense, do a game, gone. It seemed like there was real intensity and position specific and individual specific work going, this is what I'm going to be asking you to do on a game day. So this is what we're going to practice. And then we're going to work on this type of pass and this movement, and you're going to do it at a tempo. Which I think is really interesting. And the way I liken it is kind of like a jigsaw puzzle, because when he was doing it with Argentina, from some of the research I've done, my understanding, he would have them come in at different times of the day and they'd all do different works. And so he'd have the defenders for 45 minutes, then your wing backs for 45 minutes, and midfielders. But it all fits together. Although they weren't all in at the same time, they were all doing stuff that would lead on to the next person. So then all of a sudden, got a picture long term, which I think is really interesting. One thing that is kind of, again, and this can link back to the El Neni stuff, that's really kind of blown me away to a certain degree, is the way that they work in midfield. And when you talk about being able to move so the ball can see you, the way that they rotate, or the way that, they go 1v1 with people and kind of leave balls into spaces for someone to right
Mm.
and all that type of stuff. I think has been really interesting, and it's really interesting to see how teams counteract it. I look at United the other day when they played them. Seems like they almost tried to match them up and put some physically very capable players in there to try and turn it into, almost a 1v1 battle with Comedy getting through lines. But yeah, I think that midfield area for me has been really interesting. And then also the way that they use the fullbacks, where they slide the ball forward into maybe a traditional 8 or 10 and then run inside off the line, where Kevin Phillips has vacated the central areas. I think that's really interesting in terms of them being able to penetrate in that area as well.
The United game was really interesting. I thought it could be a blueprint of how to play against Leeds this season, because Leeds are so man orientated out of possession and they're really man for man. Then theoretically, if the deepest midfielder can play and then spin off and then join the attack past the midfield line, then because they've maybe made a blindside movement past the player that's pressing them, then they can be the player that starts the attack. And then you saw McTominay score 2, Fred I think set up 2, and you're thinking this really could be a blueprint how to play against Leeds, because again, I'm sure they would have addressed this after the game. But like I said, if you're the deepest player and you're man oriented on your team, and you can at the same time as the ball's moving make a blindsided movement behind them, then they go, unless they turn around and just follow you like American football, which is just not, they're going to be attracted to the ball to some extent, then you might be able to then join the attack from a set from one of the wide positions, or even from the 9, like as a third man. So, and then they scored a few goals from that, and I was looking and thinking this really could be something that other teams follow here. But yeah, it was really it was a really interesting game.
I also think it's interesting, like, all you need is someone to fall asleep for 2 seconds. All of a sudden he's got a 5-10 yard head start on you. That then becomes an issue because you've got an overload in those central areas. So I think that was particularly interesting. Linking back to some of the other analytical stuff that you've done, one bit of what I really liked was the showing inside from counter-attacks with the 2 centre-backs. Can you just talk through kind of the principles behind that and what you'd seen regarding that area?
Yeah, I think this is probably quite a controversial one, in the sense that it's something that came up speaking to someone a few years ago, and I've kind of just looked at it ever since. And again, I don't think there's a right or wrong in the situation, but it's something that you're starting to see a bit more now. Seen Liverpool, Arsenal do it this season. Leicester did it this season and last season. I've had a few debates with people. Is it just the natural response to defending a counter-attack? Is it coached? Does it work? Does it not work? Is it perfect? Of course, it's not perfect. I don't think anything is perfect, but does it minimize risk is, I think, what we're looking at here. If you're defending a counter-attack, how do you minimize risk? And how do you, there's always going to be a trade-off, right? So what is when you're making the trade-off, what side you land on? The situation would be, the one you're referring to would be, you've got 2 centre-backs or 2 defenders retreating, defending a counter-attack. There's 3 attacking players or maybe 4 attacking players. The ball's central, so the ball's being, which is important, the ball's being carried by a central player. Imagine you've now got just 3 players. So you've got a central player running with the ball. You've got 2 wide players. Historically, I think a lot of teams have. Again, I would have and still do this myself. So I don't see it as a major issue, but would stand narrow and perhaps show the ball, block the centre of the ball, block the centre of the goal, and show the ball outside. Once the ball then gets played outside, then you defend that, which would be obviously a cutback or a cross or a shot, depending on where the wide player is. So the danger with that, I think, is you open up that second phase, which is quite a dangerous moment, because once the ball then goes wide, you've now got 2 players defending a cutback, of which you can't see the furthest man who's making a run from the back post. You've got to defend the space in front of the goal, allowing a cutback, or you jump out and defend the cutback, and then you allow the space in front of the goal with a ball across the front. And you might then have runners joining the attack. Obviously, you might have retreating defenders as well, but you might have runners joining the attack as well. Obviously, the pros of that are you stop them having a shot from distance, you defend the centre of the goal, you essentially elongate the attack to allow your defenders to recover. So I don't think there's an awful lot with it. Just one other way of looking at it might be having your centre backs stand wider when they're retreating and forcing the play inside. So I think the benefit of that could be you isolate the player with the ball in the middle. By isolating that player in the middle, you invite them to having a shot. So as they take a touch forwards, when the ball's just about to be touched from their foot, that's when you can close in a bit. And as they get nearer to the edge of the box, you don't want them shooting. Depending on the profile of the player, you probably don't want them shooting anywhere near the D. So as the player approaches the final third and the box, you squeeze in a bit more, and then you close off the options for him to pass wider than you because the space is then getting smaller. And hopefully you can isolate that player, you can force him into a long distance shot. So the trade-off would be, what would be better? Would you prefer them to have a shot from 25 yards, or would you prefer them to pass on the outside of you for a cutback? Again, it depends on what your team's like or what the profile of the player's like, but it could be a preferable option in that situation. Because again, there's trade-offs. If you could be in a situation where they pass inside you, in between the two centre backs, and one of the players on the outside runs in behind and receives the ball. You could not quite block the player on your far shoulder with your body shape, because the idea is you're showing inside, but you're blocking him out with, like I said before, your cover shadow, and you play to their back foot, and then they can drive at you. And then you have to turn your whole body around, which would be slower, and they can attack from there. So there are always trade-offs. We actually had a bit of work done with us as a CPD last year at Palace around facing inside or facing outside in this situation, and it was more about the fullback facing inside, and it was just interesting conversations came up, and different people had different. There's so many experienced coaches at Palace and ex-players at Palace, so it's an incredible environment for me to learn in and to be around so many experienced coaches and players, and it's just and these sorts of conversations arise regularly. It's a really positive, healthy environment to develop as a coach, and the conversation came up around doing this as a fullback. So it was kind of suggested the fullback facing inside. If the ball goes in between you, by facing inside, you can actually turn around quicker than if you're facing outside, slower to turn around and then retreat and follow the runner. Same in this situation. It may be quicker, even if you are standing wide and you're showing inside, to turn around and run and follow the run if the player's on your far shoulder. Obviously, there are conversations came up, which I think both sides of the argument are really valid and really interesting in terms of, well, if you're facing inside, you're allowing that space in between you, you're then allowing a big space for the ball to go into, and you're not forcing the play away from goal, which I think is definitely true. So again, I think that what I'd summarize would be, it's just trade-offs, right? I think it's your style of play is important. What feels comfortable to you, what feels comfortable to your players is massive. What your players are able to learn and to take on, and how you can minimize risk or maximize advantageous situations, and then you and your team got to decide what feels most comfortable. But it's just options and possibilities.
Yeah, so I think what you've alluded to there regarding it being appropriate for players is probably the biggest one for me. I think that, just trying to think, if I was Man City, I might be more inclined to let them shoot from that central area in a 3v2. There's two reasons for that. The first one is I think Ederson isn't bad from longer range shots. He's pretty good from distance in terms of being able to save that. What he's struggled with a little bit more recently is coming out at players' feet and rushing out too far and getting ball slid behind him. Look at the goals they can see against Tottenham. There's a couple of examples of that. I mean, he's still not bad at it, but that's something, an area that he could probably develop on. So I would be more inclined to show inside and go, okay, we're going to back the keeper to make a save, it goes central, our defenders can go and do that. If I had Wan-Bissaka as a fullback, I'd probably be inclined to go, let him try and go 1v1 with you, because he's a very good 1v1 defender. Then that one,
Definitely.
you might go wide and go, okay, we're backing you in a 1v1 to get something on it, to get a block shot,
100%, yeah,
play wide, whatever that is, delay enough to get recoveries in. So I think a lot of these things, it does probably come down to the profile of the player that you have, but also the profile of going up against. If we've got Harry Kane central and Sissoko running left wing, I'm giving it to Sissoko. I think there's a really good clip of Van Dijk doing that last year. I think last year against Tottenham, where it was Son and Sissoko in a 2v1 against him, and he basically went to Sissoko, have a shot on your left.
Yeah. I remember that clip. Yeah,
he was like, "Go on, have a shot on your left," because I think that my percentages are higher with that than if you give it to Son. So I think you can go down to real detail in terms of, you know, if this player gets it, do this. If this player gets do that. But I think in terms of principles for your team, I think sometimes it is kind of what you've got as a team and as a thing to say, well, this is how we're going to defend with this goalie because of X, Y, Z, or in this situation on the right hand side because Aaron's very good in his 1v1. So we're going to show it outside and show it there, and you're going to go and deal with that, and we'll deal with the secondary examples after that.
I think with that, I think there's a few things there, which is, I think you're totally right on what you said there. I completely agree. The profile of the player is massive. Just quickly, something which I think came up in the Leeds game the other day was they were attacking, I think it might be 4v2, and Bamford ran through the ball was central and Bamford was central, and he ran through the middle of both defenders. And by doing that, he narrowed them off, because the one who's facing the ball stays in line with the ball, the other one follows the run. So by narrowing the two players off, then you then can pass on the outside of the one that's moved, and then the player on the right has maybe got a free shot now. And that was an interesting thing. I think Bamford did that totally unselfishly, and again, it looked very much that was planned, and that was worked on, I should say. And he made a run through the middle, and then it's just interesting how it closed the two off. And again, it might be a way of well, they're going to defend wide, and then like you said again before to me, maybe off camera, it was it's a game of chess. Then if they're going to then defend wide, well then we're going to run in between you both, and we're going to make you narrow up, and then we're going to play on the outside of you. Maybe back in terms of the players, I think that there's probably two ways of doing it, right? There's probably, you believe in something massively, and it's in line with your club philosophy, and it's in line with the other coaches, and maybe so obviously in my role as an assistant coach, I'm guided massively by my head coach, and we work together in a team. So we'd conversations. If I had an idea, obviously I'd run it by the head coach, and then we'd go off that. I would never just go, okay, we're now going to start doing that, because that's not a good team dynamic, and that's not how you're never going to develop players that way. So in my situation, if I said, okay, I think this works really well, or my head coach said to me, Josh, I think this works really well, what do you think? Discuss it. I think if you both think that it works, and you're both really keen on going with it, then how much can we convince the players that this is the right thing to do? I think if it's really important to you, and you both coaches agree on it, and you both think it's a really vital element of the game and really going to develop your team, but most importantly the players, and it's in line with the club philosophy and the player philosophy, then can we convince the players it's the right thing to do, and ultimately they're the ones who do it on the pitch, and they have to want to do it, and they have to see the benefit in doing it. If it's the other side of the coin, probably is, well, here's an idea, here's an option, here's what we think would be good in this situation. Look, the one option is this, one option is this. Explore the two, and whatever one you feel more comfortable doing, then go for that one. And that's not to say you're giving up control, or you're giving up complete autonomy to the players, but you're giving them an element of ownership, an element of liberty and creativity. And from there, you'd have to assume at some point it's not going to work, and then you have an interesting conversation where you go, well, you're going to carry on doing this way, or you're going to go to another way. And then the player has a moment where they go, okay, maybe I'll try to do this, start doing this way, and then they can come to a decision themselves of how they want to progress. I think it's allowing our players to have the tools to explore and probe. I think try, fail, and then hopefully at some point succeed with it. But it depends on how wedded you are to the idea and how wedded you are to the concept. If you're going to go, this is the way we want to do it, and you're going to carry on doing this because this is the best thing for you. There's obviously a massive grey area in between, but those would probably be the two ways of approaching.
Obviously, you're trying to convince the guys or kids or whoever it is to kind of use these techniques. How important is it for them to be able to see it at the top level? So how important are those clips that you're going away and getting and saying, we want you to give this a go. Here are some of the reasons why. Here's an example, to kind of almost immediately get buy-in to say, well, there's players at the very top level that are doing this. So it's something to explore.
Yeah, I think the use of pro clips is really valuable. And there's loads of things here which are really interesting. I think one is, I don't know how many young players watch 90 minutes of a match on a weekend or on a weekday and watch more than one game or more than two games like we coaches would do. I really don't know how common that is now. I think in terms of the way we're so wedded to our phones these days, and the way young people are now on Twitter, on TikTok, on YouTube, where videos are quick and short videos, Instagram, it's quick, it's 30 seconds, it's no more than that, otherwise you're bored. And therefore, the adolescent brain is developing along those lines. So we need to cater to that, and we need to educate and engage the players in order to be better learners when we can, but also provide, like you said, clips to go, this is a 5-second clip of this working, and this is exactly what I mean. And the beauty of working with these players is a lot of them have been in the system since they were 7, 8 years old. So you can say something to them and you can explain something to them and they get it straight away. And whether that's a practice design or whether that's a body shape or the reason for doing something, it's bang, it's immediate. It's, yeah, I get it. And then it's a chance to have a go at it. And if they're not quite getting it, then you go, do you remember that chat about that? Oh, yeah. And if they don't, they'll ask you. So that's also good. But I think the beauty of it is the short clip and really the game understanding and the capacity to take that on so quickly means that they can in theory learn a lot really, really fast. In terms of how useful it is to see clips and pro clips, massive. Like I said, I don't think they're watching that many games. I think that in terms of learning and be able to analyze the game, they're obviously good at, but whether they can watch a whole game and have not only the patience, but maybe the time and maybe the resources to do that. And then whether we'd be able to go, clip out all the moments that this thing is happening. That's quite an elevated thing to do. So us providing that is really important. The head of analysis at the club, who also works as a coach in my age group, which is again fantastic for myself and for the players to learn from and to have the facilities there and the exposure there to use analysis in the best possible way for the players, for their learning, how they can resource it, how they can access it. So we use Huddle as an analysis tool where our games are filmed, and then we can then go on. So the players then clip out some moments, 5 good moments, 5 areas of development, post them to us, share them with us, can do annotations on them, circles, arrows, little notes, little clicks, little timestamps. And then we can also watch the game, click things out and share it with the players. So there's loads of engagement around that whilst we're doing analysis remotely. Obviously, ideal situation in the classroom and you're going over bits on the screen, but at the minute we can't do that, obviously. So there's loads of possibilities to do that. And then even players can come to training. Before training, I can go, did you see the clip that we did? Myself or the head coach will say, poor player, did you see this clip? Here's my iPad, here's my phone, have a look at this. Go over it with them, maybe on pitch side for 30 seconds before training, and then it just reinforces the message that we're trying to get across. Or it might be like you said, I I saw this clip the other day. Here's Tielemans doing this thing I showed you about, and here's this, and then it's you can get it across. Whether then that directly transfers into getting it, or just unconscious consciousness having it straight away, then that's a different story. That's a different process, I suppose. That's different. You measure that in a different yardstick, but the way we try and get there is using those methods.
So I've got two questions off the back of that. The first one is, what is the reasoning for having an analyst come and coach with you guys, and how does that work in a collaborative sense? And then the second question is, obviously we talk about the attention span becoming shorter because of, like you said, Instagram, all that type of stuff. It is flick through or all that type of stuff. In terms of process for you, when you're watching a game of football to try and discuss a topic, do you just watch that individual player for 90 minutes, or do you just watch the game and then a theme comes out and then you kind of go back and forth? What would the process be? Say, for example, Tielemans, you wanted to look at the way he moved in order to receive from lateral passes and stuff. Would you go and want to do that before he played, and then you'd watch that game specifically for that reason? Or would you just watch the game and, as you're going along, maybe jot a few things down of bits of areas that you saw that were good?
Yeah, so I'll answer that question first. I think, so the way I tend to do it would be I'd watch a game when something interesting happens that I think I can share the detail behind that, or have a look at and try and get my head around the detail behind it, and then have a go at sharing it. I'll just write down on my phone just the timestamp of the game, just 30 minutes or whatever. Write it down on my phone, and then I'll download the game and clip it, and then I'll have a look at what was I looking at in this moment. Oh yeah, I've got a little note here. I was looking at no touch turn. I was looking at building up with the back three, whatever it might be, and then I'll go and look at that. I won't necessarily go into the game prior and I'm going to look at this today, because I think that will maybe limit. It might happen twice in the first 7-8 minutes, and then you can look at something else. So I think definitely something that I've been able to do more since being educated at Palace and speaking to coaches and having CPDs would be looking at the technical elements of the game in isolation of the tactical elements of the game. So not just looking at the structure of how a team are building up or pressing or how they're attacking, whatever it might be, really just trying to get my head around that and look at, again, just trying to work out what they're doing and expecting to miss out on tons of stuff and not get anywhere near tons of stuff, but just trying to maybe go, okay, this is happening 1 or 2 times and this may be what they're trying to do. Not doing that for a game, but just looking at the technical elements of it. So the technical elements of a certain touch, a certain pass, why a move broke down or had success based on the technical steps, 3 or 4 steps behind that. Heading technique, clearance technique, blocking technique, whatever we might be looking at in the week at Palace or now during this period, whatever it might be. I'm in my head, or is interesting me. Look at that game or that half just from a technical perspective. I've yet to been able to do both at the same time. I'm not saying it's impossible, but I think doing both at the same time will be pretty difficult because you look at the overall positions of the players. I think that means you can't quite look at what they're doing with their feet or with their hips or with their body or with their arms, which you need to be able to look at technical detail. I think so. So yeah, that hopefully. Remind me what your first question was.
So in terms of
about the coach, yeah. Sorry. Yeah, I mean, again, I don't know the exact ins and outs and reasoning behind that. That's probably a question for people higher up in the club than myself. But in terms of the benefit of it, I think it's really great for the players to have. I always think it's great for the players to have a few different voices. Another pair of eyes to see something, different styles. I think if there's many coaches you can have with different styles, different ways of engaging, is always helpful. And I think it's also, like I said, it's great to have just an extra person, myself and head coach, can bounce off and get that more analytical perspective, that side of it where we go, okay, well. One example would be he works with the 18s in his day to day. So he goes, oh well, we're doing this with the 18s, or we're doing this pattern with the 18s, we're doing this throwing pattern with the 18s. Let's give it a go here. Yeah, thanks, that's fantastic. Let's give that a go. Can we share the videos with the players? Yeah, you can. Here's the patterns we're trying to work on. Share them with the players, and then we can work on them. And maybe the session, if he's not with us every session in the week, if he's with that session, he's with us. We do that stuff in that session, because you're getting information. You get some real consistency then through the academy from the 18s, 16s, 15s, and trying to kind of mirror or work off or be influenced by certain things that they're doing. And also it's really great to have that insight. So I think you got like my head coach has played over 600 professional games, obviously a wealth of experience there, giving these players, I've been there, done it, this is my advice. And then you've also got Dougie coming in saying, you know, this is the messaging we're giving to the 18s. The ones who are doing it are having loads of success doing it because they're doing it in this way, they're analysing the games in this way, they're getting their clips in on time, and they're having loads of success, and they're really playing well. So it's a direct reference point that we want you to be doing your clips, we want you to be analysing game in a certain way, we want you to be honing these techniques, because the players who are currently getting paid to play football at this club are doing those things. And I think it's a great way of, it's powerful for the players. That it definitely is powerful.
Does he ever challenge you on kind of some of the stuff that you're doing and going from an analytical point of view? I disagree.
Yeah, we argue all the time. We're arguing honestly 24/7. He always goes, "Yeah, let's get the tactics board out and look at that," which I love. No, I'm joking. I think it's great to be challenged, and the best thing about working in an elite environment is being challenged. If you say something, you need to be able to back it up with evidence, or with why it might work, why it not work, why it might not work. I also think it's really important to be flexible and to be able to have a conversation and see both sides of it, and see sometimes it might work and sometimes it might not work, and look at it from different perspectives. I think that's how you have really positive conversations. And if you can do that in game, and you can adapt and flex the things that happen in game, I think that's one of the most exciting bits of the job. That's one of the funnest bits of the job, and that's one of the most rewarding bits of the job. No, we have really good conversations. All three of us have really good conversations, and in fact, all the coaches in the academy have conversations around. And there's always a tactics board line around where you go, let's look it on the board and let's speak about it there. And what do you think? And yeah, good point. When have you seen it done? I think that's powerful.
Yeah, it sounds like obviously you've got a real positive environment there. Obviously, I mentioned to you when we first spoke that I knew Coops from my A license, and he seemed like a real good character. Yeah. Like, you know, with people like him around, and
yeah, Coops is ledge. I've learned lots from him.
Yeah, real good guy, and I think that that environment obviously transmits kind of to the players when they see that there's that good relationship where everyone's striving to be better. The players feel that and kind of have that vibe as well. So I guess kind of looking towards Palace, what would a Palace team look like? What would a Palace player look like? What's the vision for the academy in terms of if I were to come and watch from your under 9s through to your under 18s and stuff on a weekend, what would I expect to see as like the Crystal Palace way, if you like?
I would say that I think with these things and with these questions, I think it's a really interesting approach. I do think that a lot of clubs that I hear of, there's similarities across the board, right? I think a lot of clubs, there's similarities. You want to create the most effective player, and there's quite a lot of similarities in the way you want to go about that. So the reason I said that is I don't want to be here and acting as if we've got the magic ingredient or the golden ingredient. I think every club is doing fantastic things and creating great players and also really good people. I think that's a massive part of it. You want to create really good people, because a lot of them won't be footballers, and they need to be able to use the experience to benefit them in their later life. But I think going back on that, what we look at and what we really want is to have players that are exciting and have flair and are creative and are positive and are able to to have that slight off the cuff, slight bit of exciting ingeniousness, where that's very bespoke of the area of players that love playing football. I know there's been a lot spoken about. I know Eze grew up elsewhere, but playing in cages, playing the small portion of the country that's still able to play maybe in the streets, and allowing that to flourish in the academy is massive. You've also got then the side of being able to temper that and being able to control that when you go through the age groups, and you've got those players that are unbelievable 1v1 or unbelievable 1v2, and have got levels of creativity and levels of creativity and levels of confidence and levels of ingenuity that you wouldn't necessarily be able to create in an academy, but you can only enhance and you can only facilitate. You've also got then the other side of where you need to kind of limit that, not limit in a negative way, but you can't have 11 players doing that once you get to youth development phase, because it's just not, you're not going to be creating a wider variety of player. You're not going to be able to control matches and control possession and be a team that can move succinctly from having the ball to attacking and can maintain the ball, and there's nothing on. So you need a variety of play, and we're starting to create more players now, and look at creating more players that manage the ball in a kind of maybe more in a more, not calmer, but different rhythms. I think is what we're trying to now also develop. I mean, again, it's only my third season, so I'm going off it from quite a new pair of eyes, quite a new perspective. But I think players that can play with different rhythms and different tempos is a massive one. Can you maintain when you need to maintain? Can you have the right body shape to penetrate when you can penetrate? Can you keep the ball and control the game without just keeping the ball? So how do you manipulate the other team, and how do you make the most space possible without just turning into a passing drill or onto possession practice, which ultimately will end up with it becoming frantic? How can you keep that controlled and contained, and then how can you then use your typically Crystal Palace players to attack in the final third and be aggressive and be brave and be creative with the ball and do things that you're there on the sideline. Oh, wow, what did he just do with the ball? Which genuinely, one of the great things about working at Crystal Palace is the game doesn't go by, or session doesn't go by, where you literally look at your colleague and go, "Oh my God, what did he just do?" And it's like that moment where you're like, "That's unbelievable," and that's that, as you know yourself, working in the game, that's literally what you get out of bed for.
So in terms of the facilitation, I think this is a really interesting topic point. How do you go about facilitating players to still have that cage culture, that cage mentality, which I didn't grow up with it, but I've subsequently learned about it and think it's brilliant. I think that culture is really good in terms of the way it can produce players and produce good people, and the way that it can challenge people to improve and stuff. How do you facilitate that kind of 1v1 skillful, competitive nature in an academy where you're gonna, as you've kind of alluded to there, want a little bit more structure at points? How do you go about blending those two?
I think probably two ways. I think one would just be, again, nothing that enlightening, but I'd say first one would be decision making is just everything in football. Absolutely everything. If you cannot make the decision at the right moment, then you're probably not going to have a career. In fact, you're definitely not going to have a career. So you need to be able to make the right decision with the ball at the right moment. And if you are able to really win that 1v1 battle with the fullback or with the centre back or with the centre midfielder, whatever it might be, but you aren't able to turn that into a good decision to help the rest of the team, then it's really no good. It's actually no point in being able to do all that, because I'm not saying whether you can do that at 12, 13, 40. I'm not saying an age cap on this right now. But I'm saying if you're not unable to, if you're not unable to kind of filter that into a really important and decisive decision, then that's going to be of no use to the people, your coaches, and when you're not going to give yourself a chance of getting a scholar and then going beyond. So decision making element would be huge.
So do you guys do a lot of like 1v1 based stuff? Because it looks like a lot of the players that have come through kind of your setup and whatnot in recent years have been very good 1v1, be it defensively or attacking wise. Is that a lot of the stuff, or is that again alluding back to that kind of cage culture?
I don't think I mean, in my phase, on the youth development phase, we still do some, but we do less than you probably do in the foundation phase. You have to, again, a foundation phase might be in a better, coaches will be in a better position to answer that than I would be, but we probably go along more the lines of structuring that which we have and which have come through the academy, structuring that a bit more and getting to that decision making piece around when and where, when's the right moment to offload, what are your other responsibilities around the team in and out of possession, what are the good positions to be in, what are the good body shapes to take up in order to really accentuate your capacity to then go and be unbelievable 1 versus 1 or be able to be really effective in the final third. So we're probably looking at it from that route. Obviously, you want to continue doing 1 versus 1, 2 versus 2s, little technical practices like that, as much as you can. But we wouldn't do an awful lot of that in the week, just because we're trying to make it more, trying to really focus on that collaborative team approach, which they at this stage they really need a lot more of.
And what would your working week look like? So if we talk about a working week, roughly what would you do in it? What sessions you do? Is there a curriculum topic for that week, or is it geared towards a game at a weekend? What does that look like in general?
Yeah, so we have six weekly topics. Basically, the 3 phases in possession and 3 phases out of possession. So build, control and create and finish, and then high pressing, mid block, low block, and then you've got transitions worked in within that. We train 4 times a week, and then we have a match on a Sunday. So we build it through the week. We tend to have a technical element involved in every session. We tend to then have work on the topic with a maybe possession game or 4v4 game or whatever it may be. And as we get later into the week, we have some unit work on a Thursday where me and my head coach and an analyst coach who's with us would split groups and take a unit each and do some more individualized practices. Yes, Saturday mornings we do we build it around a lot of player ownership work. So 15 minutes of the overlapping technical topics or technical focuses, which they will work on themselves, and then we'll do something related to preparing for the game the next day. So we'll work on that. The phase we're in that week, we would do it specifically to how we want to play tomorrow. If we know something about how the other team are going to play, we might work off that, but under 15s. Again, this is probably a whole podcast in itself, but the result, the performance, what's more important? Probably neither are more important, but we're not just doing it to win, we're doing it to develop the players. Obviously, we do also want to do as well as we can in the match for numerous reasons, but and also under 15 teams can change, personnel can change, players playing up, players playing down, trialists. So it's not totally worth looking at how the other team are going to play. That said, if you played them 2 weeks prior, like we play Charlton quite regularly, we know they're going to play, they know how we're going to play. You can set up in a certain way and adapt to that. So that's what we tend to do on a Saturday morning.
So 2 questions off this. First one, how much benefit have you seen from the IDP stuff? And the work with them coaching one another? How did you get to that stage? Because I know that when we spoke before, we were talking about the England rugby team are particularly forthcoming in that and having players coaching one another in sessions, which I think is a great idea. And then the second one, in terms of on match days, when we're talking about maybe changing tactics and stuff, is that something that the players encouraged to either come up with strategies or adapt the strategies during the games, or is that led by you guys still?
So in terms of the IDP stuff, I think it's an ongoing conversation we have around IDPs, you know, and we have it with a lot with our when guys from the FA come down and speak to us, tutors have really interesting conversations around kind of what is an IDP? Do we need to have 4 or 5 IDPs? Do we need to have one IDP that maybe don't know if so Paul Holder's one of our FA tutors who's fantastic, and he comes in and speaks to us about IDPs. He did a Zoom call with us, a webinar over lockdown about IDPs, and kind of his belief is, which I think's got loads of interesting points and things you can build off, is got under 15 player. Do you need to have 5 IDPs or 4 IDPs when maybe you could have your one IDP, which is receive on your back foot, and then from that other IDPs will then develop. So body shape to receive on your back foot, you've got to have the right body shape. You've got to scan. You've got to have a positive first touch. You've got to have a clean first touch. You've got to be at the right angle. Blah blah blah. You've got maybe 5 or 6, 7 things that are coming off that, but they're just implicit rather than explicit. So the player can just focus on one thing. At the minute, our lads, which I think works well for them, have got 4 or 5. Where I think it's 4 in fact, where 3 we put together, and then 1 they come with, 1 or 2 they come with themselves. So the way that the Saturday mornings have worked, I think it's been a bit of a process. I think we started doing it about 2 years ago, and obviously the first time you do it, players sort of look at you like, you've got mannequins here, you've got boards, you've got cones, you've got flat markers, you've got bibs. Off you go. You've got 15 minutes, and you've got 12 going to the goalkeeper. Can I use you undo shooting? And so then you need to. It's a slow process, and you manage that. And I think it's a really rewarding process because you start with that. You go through that really like scrappy kind of that scrappy moment where players don't really know what to say and don't lead each other and don't feel confident doing it and don't have the ideas, and you kind of go through that difficult period. And when you get through that, the light at the end of the tunnel is you've got players who are now making their own little practices, who are coaching each other, technically coaching each other, who are now understanding their own IDP a lot better, their own needs a lot better, because they're teaching it to someone else, therefore they understand it a lot better. And you've also now, the idea is you're also now creating players that have a voice and are leaders on the pitch, because they're getting more of a voice than they potentially would do within the session. Following on to your next question, on a match day, to be honest with you, on a match day, we would tend to lead more of the tactical dialogue. We obviously ask the players, what do you think about the game? What do we need more of? What do we need less of? Etc. But we would rarely, and it might be something to look at, but we would rarely go, how are that team playing? What do we need to do? Coach it and do it. I do think that at this stage it's very hard. It's quite a difficult thing for players to do. If our job is to see the whole pitch and see everything, and we're not playing, to ask the players to do that is possibly quite a hard thing to do. And I don't know how much worth that would have. I think there's benefit to it, but I wonder, as you go older, is that a transfer? As you get older, is that a transferable skill? Is that a skill that's appreciated and is needed, or is it more important just to be able to look at your own game, or the way the unit's playing, or the way you're linking with other players, other units in certain phases, and be able to alter those little moments rather than bigger picture stuff? Don't know, probably a bit of an open question there, but But no, on a match day, we tend to go, okay, this is what we need to do. These are the spaces. These are the spaces they're attacking. These are the spaces we need to attack. This is how we need to press. This is how. But the players do adapt to it really well. The players adapt to it really well, and they can, again, like I said, they can take things on really well. So yeah.
No, I think it's a constantly evolving question, and something that's interesting. How much ownership are we given to players? How much information is given, and what's the line between them feeling supported and, you know, us, for lack of a better term, earning our money?
Mm.
And also them, you know, being able to challenge themselves and all that type of stuff. And I float between the two. My biggest concern I have at the moment is that we go one of two ways. Either it's always coach led and they never get any opportunities to, you know, explore themselves, be it in session or in games, or we go the other way where it's completely player led majority of the time. And like I see a lot of people that kind of leave them to it during a period, paid nothing, and then during the period break, they talk to them for like 5 minutes straight, expect them to be able to take all that information and then come back on. And the way I liken it is, it's particularly at the younger age groups, it's like asking them to read Harry Potter, but they've never read like a basic book. So you're trying to get them to understand the game at the end without ever kind of going through to them. You wouldn't just say to someone they're reading Harry Potter, yeah, just work out the words as you go along.
Yeah.
They'd be like, yeah, but I don't know and it and as, so how am I work out Lord Voldemort? Like, I think for me, that's a big thing at the minute is there has to be some structure to help them understand as they go through the age group. I'm not saying it has to be all coach led, but I think that there has to be points where we step in and say, you know what, we're actually going to help you with this area.
Totally. Like, I think it needs to be a method that is used and is justifiable in the right moments and the right opportunities. I think, like anything, that's like what, otherwise the syllabuses wouldn't exist in schools. Like you just said, that's how to engage with the players. You know, I don't mean the coaching syllabus. I mean, to rephrase that, I mean, to a joined up way of thinking, a methodical approach where we're going to do something and this is the way we're going to do it, and this is the reason behind it, this is when we're going to do it, but our overall way of delivering is just a bit more holistic and a bit more, we are the coaches and we're going to help you develop. But in the right occasions, like you said, there's going to be opportunities to go, this is going to be player led, or this is going to be really player impacted. I know there's some great stuff goes on at the youth development phase, age groups and slightly above at England, where they do a lot of tactical planning themselves, which I'm sure is brilliant. And I would also imagine that wouldn't be everything they do. There's probably a time and a place and a justifiable period in which that happens. Otherwise, like you said, the players aren't going to be are just kind of be given all the tools without knowing how to use them, and there's no real point in that. So yeah,
my concern comes is when they might not necessarily have the tools. If you're asking them to come up, I get the counter argument to this is people are going to say, yeah, but if you let them get on with it, they're going to come up with some solutions that you might not have thought of. I 100% agree with that. There are going to be occasions that my problem is, if you kept say for example the 4 position, if you just keep telling the 4 to get on the ball and he loses it every time, but you just keep telling him to get on it, what happens if he never figures out that it's just because his body shape's off slightly? It feels like you're kind of letting the child down because you're never supporting them. I appreciate there'd be a point where you say to them, okay, we'll go and explore that. What different ways can you receive to try and retain the ball? What different ways can you receive under pressure to try and get yourself out of it? But if it gets to a stage where you've been going at this session after session, match after match, week after week, and you never actually go in, okay, have you thought about this? I feel like you're not developing them in the long term. All you're essentially doing is not providing them with enough support in a really high challenging situation.
Yeah, I agree. You're not coaching, and are you, if you're allowing the player just to make the same mistake over and over again without helping them learn why? I think again, it's like that kind of trade-off point. Say you're doing a finishing practice with the player, and you're doing you're working off mannequins, and they're doing a certain type of finish, and they're missing the target. You can go, well, the reason this is happening is this. By the way, show them the way why it's happening. The other option is doing this. They're then going to find some way of adapting that. And there are loads of times where players come up and do things that I would have not expected in that situation to work, or would have not done myself, or would have not seen done myself, but it still works, and it still doesn't mean it's right, but it doesn't mean it's wrong either. It means that there's an opportunity for the player to explore that and go, this is the reason it worked, this is the reason. I think if you can give the reason behind something, if you can see the technical detail of, or the tactical detail of why it worked, why it didn't work, and then now you can explore that's everything, right? I think if it's this didn't work, but keep giving it a go. It's like, well, how do I get better at that? It's like you and me would be the same. If I was learning a language and I didn't know why I was getting the language wrong, then no good, is it?
Yeah, it's like having a password to your phone, isn't it? You put the password in, just comes up with a big X and says, no, it's not right.
Yeah.
Like, why isn't it right?
Yeah.
The example you're giving now, I think, is a good one. It might just be a little point and go, at the minute, you're not set when you're going to strike it. Can you try and set yourself better? You're not telling them specifically what to do in terms of body shape or anything like that. All you're saying is, can you set yourself so that when you strike it, it'll be a bit cleaner.
100%. But I do think, like you said before, we have to coach. We're coaches. We need to coach. If you're not coaching, then what you're doing? So you need to coach, develop the player, give them your expertise and your advice, work off their imagination and their ideas as well, to get that real great combination of them developing themselves and you developing them, and then also throwing elements of ownership there, and allow players to have a voice and to be able to be confident having a voice. And it's such a difficult one under 15, under 16, under 14. It's an age group where we've all been there. You're embarrassed, you're uncomfortable in your own skin, and you can't help that. And the adolescent brain is developing at a rate quicker than, again, I don't know the exact details on it, but we had a CPD done with us at Palace, and it's like the adolescent brain is going through more changes than at any other period in your life, and is more unstable. I think more so even in boys than girls, and less developed in boys than is in girls. I think girls develop quicker than boys, and things become embarrassment and anger and stress very, very quickly. So they don't really want to say like even organize the rest of the defenders, or they don't want to communicate with the centre midfielder because it's embarrassing to talk when you're that age. Sometimes you just want to get your head down. You just got a new haircut you feel a bit embarrassed about, like you just got a new tracksuit, has anyone noticed it? You're coming in with your AirPods and you want to just get in and get out. And then when you're on the pitch, you express yourself, but you don't really say a lot. And I think that's symptomatic of these, especially think 15s, 14s, 15s, 16s. I think when they get to 16s, they definitely become a bit more confident in their own skin and see the need for it a bit more as well. Whereas at 15, they're still like remembering what was like at 13 and 14, where they're still kind of getting used to the youth development phase. But it's our job to show them, to push them into that direction. And really, as a footballer, you do you grow up quickly, don't you? And you do become an adult quicker than other young people of your age around the country. So it's important that you get there, but you really don't feel comfortable speaking. You don't feel comfortable having those conversations. So we need to be able to facilitate and create an environment in which they can get better in those skills, because it's not just a skill with their feet that they're going to need to be good at, or fast and strong, where they need to be good communicators. They need to be good socially. They're going to need to have good awareness. So we're there to coach and train that as well. We've got to do everything.
And it's a good life skill, being able to communicate effectively with people,
Completely, yeah.
honest feedback to what your feelings are about them, or take critique from what their feelings are about you. That's a really important life skill that, if you can get in those IDP style works, is only going to benefit them as they go through the age groups as a footballer, but as they go through the age groups, whatever they do, if they become an accountant or if they become
Totally, yeah.
is.
100%.
So listen, last question for me, and this is something that I ask everyone, which is who's the best player you've worked with or against and why, or who's the best coach that you've worked with or against and why? You can answer either one of those.
Really good question. It's probably I couldn't pinpoint one coach. I've worked with so many good coaches and against so many good coaches. Player wise, so yeah, I wouldn't want to highlight a single one, especially the ones, like I said, the ones that I'm working with the Palace right now. But in terms of players, again, there's probably you probably wouldn't be in a position where I had to put a name on it because of the age they're at. But I would just fall back. It's a really boring answer, but I just fall back on the thing that I said previously, which is I'm very grateful to be in a job where I'm around young players every day, and you see them do something with the football, and you genuinely look over it, and you just know that moment where you just catch someone else's eye, and you know that even if a coach is standing on the other side of the pitch, you can look over at the exact moment and you look at each other and just raise your eyebrows or be like, wow, that just happened. So that's probably the best answer I can give you on that one. I think I wouldn't want to say a player name right now because I've worked mainly in the youth development phase. I've worked a bit in foundation phase and a bit higher, but nothing that solid. So I wouldn't want to put a name on it, but just to say that you're around players all the time that you're like, wow, that was pretty special.
Perfect. Listen, Josh, I really appreciate your time and thanks for coming on. I look forward to seeing more of the content on Twitter and stuff, and hopefully we can catch up again soon.
Thanks, Michael. Thanks for having me on.
Thanks for listening to the Sports Initiative podcast with me, Michael Wright. Please remember to follow us on Twitter, Facebook and Instagram at the Sports Initiative Podcast, and share this podcast with friends and family. I'll see you next week.